Hey, welcome to Zippy's Garage. This is part 2 of our video series highlighting the fun and games from the National Corvette Museum Corvette Racing Event hosted at Hershey, Pennsylvania this past month. And what this video is going to highlight is the question and answer and the seminar hosted by Doug Fehan from Corvette Racing and Tommy Milner, the Corvette Racing driver, current driver of the C8R. And what they're going to discuss is they're going to talk about the event, the Corvette Racing Event, which was the 24 Hours at Le Mans from 2021. So let the video roll. It's about an hour long, and then at the end we capture some of the question and answers. I do apologize up front for the video quality. The neon lights that are on display at the museum played a little bit of havoc with the color settings on my GoPro, but at the same token, you're not worried about the color. You're worried about the content and listening to Tommy and Doug. So without any further ado, let's get on to the seminar.
This is a weekend, and generally speaking, we work weekends. So weekends that we have off are few and far between. Tommy's got a new, young, beautiful little daughter, starting his family. I got nothing going on. But, and quite frankly, we don't get paid for this, all right? We're here for one reason. Well, not one, here for a couple reasons. Number one is that we want to show our appreciation for all the things that you do that make what we do possible. You know, at Corvette Corrals, I talk about this all the time. I'm not BSing you, all right? Without your fan support, we can't go racing. Management watches those Corvette Corrals. They, you know, when you sign in and get the free t-shirt and all that stuff, I mean, they monitor all that. When you sign up on that computer, they track you for a year, like the NSA. And when you spend over 600, $600, right? Wes is turning us all in. But they watch all that, and then they watch your buying habits in the automotive field through J.D. Power, right? Through registrations. They cross-reference that, and they see what you might buy. And I can tell you, on a per capita basis, Corvette Racing is the #1 GM business producing race program that we have, and that's on you guys. Okay, so give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you for that. So, and then obviously our main job here, at the end of the day, the final distillation, aside from us both having a lot of fun at what we're doing and bringing joy and happiness and fun into your lives and picking your pockets for new vehicles, all right, our job is to sell cars. That's #1. That's the reason we race. And if you look around in the media today, all right, and you try and find a print ad for Corvette or a TV ad for Corvette, you're not going to find it. Because we don't do it. I mean, essentially, a few minor exceptions, we don't spend 10 cents advertising this car. This car is advertised through what we do on the racetrack. And I can tell you this, there's no other brand in the world that markets its car this way and solely this way. And you all know that if you're trying to buy a C8, you got about a year wait. So something we're doing in racing is paying off. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, this technology transfer thing, a little bit later and help explain to you how that evolved, where we started and where we ended up. But I wanted to lead off, speaking for Tommy and myself, for thanking all you guys for coming and supporting us. We love what we do. We love you guys. It's by design, and you have supported us undyingly throughout the last 20-some years. So thank you for that. I'll turn it over to Tommy.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, everybody. So Wes this evening has asked that I sort of talk a bit about Le Mans this year. But I think to do that, first we have to kind of go back a little bit. This car, the C8R, was designed with Le Mans in mind. That was, it's our biggest race of the year. It's the race that, it's somewhat unspoken in some ways, but if we talk about goals for the year for the team, if we won Le Mans every single year and we crashed the cars at every single race at IMSA, we'd still look back on the year and say that was a successful year because we won Le Mans. It's not in any way what we want to achieve, obviously, but that just shows how much that race means to this program, to Corvette. that is the biggest sports car race in the world, one of the biggest sporting events in the world, and the history and prestige that goes along with that race for us, with Corvette Racing, and for Corvette, and for you guys as well, to compete against Porsche, Ferrari, BMW, Aston Martin, all of the best sports cars, so to speak, in the world, to prove that this Corvette is just as good as those cars is, and oftentimes quite a bit better. So a lot of effort goes into making this race car as good as it could possibly be at that race. And that really started probably at the end of 2017 with some simulator testing in Charlotte there, where we as drivers, we don't know what we're testing once we're there. We just show up, and it's treated almost as if it is a real track day, test day, where we're at the racetrack. We show up at a certain time. There's a run plan that the engineers have planned. So what we were used to, at least at that point, was testing for upcoming races, and then all of a sudden we had this extra testing that we were doing that had nothing to do with what we had been testing before. And didn't know the time, but that was the first bits of those test days, those simulator test days at the end of 2017 were the first iterations of what this car ended up being. So obviously now fast forward, last year was supposed to be the first year at Le Mans for this car, and as we all know, we didn't race to that year with everyone's favorite word in the world, COVID. Just wasn't an option for us last year, unfortunately. So going there this year, having raced the car all last year, having seen how successful it was in IMSA, but there was still that unknown a little bit as far as Le Mans. That's what this car was not designed for entirely. It was designed to go racing and win no matter what. But a lot of effort was put into making that car as fast as it possibly could be at Le Mans. So there's a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation within the team to go there this year. We were excited to see if this car was as good as we thought it would be at Le Mans. All of the simulator testing we had done for years, for us as drivers, we were sick of, honestly, running Le Mans and different options to make the car as good as we could. So we got there for the test day, and I can tell you the thing was so good right away. So all those years of boring, sitting in a room, testing, this fake race car basically definitely paid off. The car was fast, it was competitive right away. It was a really so much better than what we had had in the past. The biggest differences fundamentally come down to we just had more downforce for the same kind of levels of drag that we had had with C7. And that was a goal that the engineers had for a long time, was to get this car. That's where we could tell from years past that we were fast and straight line, the car great, fantastically, but we always struggled in the past to the other cars in the high-speed sections, the Porsche curves, Corvette corner, Terre Rouge coming on Mulsanne. We always realized that we're just missing a little bit to everybody there. So I think it was super rewarding for the engineers, for all the guys at Pratt Miller and Corvette Racing who spent so many hours in the wind tunnel and on computers trying to make this car as good as it could be for that race. And for us as drivers to come back pretty much right away and say, yeah, this thing is really good. So the test day went well. We were pretty competitive. As always, I mean, again, for us, it was still brand new. We still learning about the car, looking at the tires, understanding what we had and where we could improve. So for us as drivers, we were excited, for sure. The engineers were excited. For us on the 4 car, we had some pretty big changes. We had two new co-drivers for myself. So this year, now we have Nick Tandy, who's been, for any of you that watched the VIR race, you can see why I was excited that he was my teammate and I had to race against someone like that, because he's always been a super tough competitor, always super fast, and that's the kind of guy that you want to have in the car with you. So his first time with us at Le Mans, And then we also had Alexander Sims, another guy that we've raced against in the past with BMW. Another great guy. I always joke that I got rid of one Brit and I got two more somehow. And Nick actually basically grew up in the same town that Ali grew up in. I think Nick lives about 5 minutes away from where Ali's parents live now. So I just got a shorter version of Ali kind of thing. So there's a lot to learn, a lot of new race car, new co-drivers trying to understand, how do we get the most out of this car. And we get through the test day, get through some of the practice, and again, the car was getting better and getting better and getting better. And so last year was the first year where at Le Mans they have this hyper pole setup, which basically means in the past it used to be you had one practice session, and then every single practice session after that was technically also a qualifying session. So if you improved your lap time, that would improve your starting position. They changed it a little bit this year. Now there's this hyper pole, which means the top 6 cars in each class, as they qualify, get their own special qualifying session, and then that determines the starting grid for the race. And Nick had a absolutely flying lap in the practice end of the qualifying session leading up to hyper pole that was going to kind of put us in or not. He qualified 4th for that one at a 47.3, I want to say. And I think with C7, I think the fastest we ever went was a 49, something like that. So 2.5 seconds faster than we've ever been before at Le Mans. And got into that hyper pole session. Nick then qualified 3rd. So just, again, we were, as the week went along, we were just getting more and more excited. For us as drivers, you're thinking, we have a car that can win this race. Absolutely, there's no doubt in my mind. And 3 car was also quick. They had a little bit of a racing, as Doug loves to say, it's about, you say it better than I do, but it's 50%.
25% great car, 25% great team, and 50% good fortune.
Yeah, and we know the 4 car knows all about bad fortune. We've had a lot of that over the last couple of years. But the 3 car had a little bit of just things out of their control and just missed that hyper pole qualifying, but they were still fast in practice sessions. They were quick. Those guys were happy with the car, excited about the race again. I keep saying excited because that's exactly sort of the feeling within the team. Everybody, the crew guys, the engineers, us as drivers, everybody could feel the energy that within the team that this was going to be a good year. And Michelin
year, not a good year.
Well, yes, Michelin year. Yeah. I wasn't the only one that didn't get that.
But
But you all caught up, didn't you?
We did, yeah, we did. So we come to race day, and there's rain in the forecast, and it's definitely looking like rain as time goes on. We didn't have any wet running all through practice, so a bit of an unknown going into the race. And sure enough, about 2 hours before the race, it's raining, and it's raining pretty hard. And get out onto the front straightaway there, and the rain intensity picks up, and it's my first time starting the race with Le Mans, so definitely, I wouldn't say that these days that I'm not sort of anxious or nervous about starting a race. That sort of those butterflies that you get anticipating something exciting happening. It's not like it used to be for me when I first started racing. You get super nervous about starting the race. As time goes on, that's kind of faded a little bit, but it all came back for the start of, here we are at Le Mans, it's raining, first time at Le Mans with the C8R. So a lot of pressure, a lot of, sort of excitement about the race. And that all came crashing down pretty quickly. So the car, the one problem with this car, and it's the only problem to be honest, there might be one more, but one that is the most frustrating for us as drivers is it's really hard to just drive away from a standstill. For whatever reason, Daytona this year, you can see, we can get going as long as we can do big burnouts, but you don't want to do a big burnout at the start of a 24-hour race at Le Mans, so you're trying to get the car rolling, and it doesn't want to, it stalls, so I have to fire it up again. And, you know, I'm not worried about it, I'm used to this has happened 1,000 times with this car. And so I go to fire it up again, I'm just kind of sitting there on the grid for a second, I go to fire it up, car fires up, and I'm just starting to slip the clutch a little bit to get going, and all of a sudden, bam, I get smacked from behind. And I'm like, I mean, really, really hard. And I got going thanks to the car that hit me, which was the Ferrari that started just behind us. And come to find out afterwards, his excuse for that little moment was that their windscreen had fogged up, which happens quite often in these cars. Not in our car, because the engineers have done a great job over the years to prevent that with a heated windscreen. But the Ferrari didn't have that, and he said that he couldn't see me or couldn't see anything, and so I didn't realize that I had basically stopped in front of him, and he just carried on like there was nobody there, and right in the back of us.
Which is what I always do when I can't see.
Yeah, you just go faster when you
That's
can't
my
see.
natural reaction for it.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, 6 hours into the race, the damage that resulted from that contact before the race had even started became too big of a problem. We had to basically come in and pit and fix the diffuser that had broken. It was fine for about 5 hours, but I could tell as soon as I got that first stint in the car, while the car was fast in the wet, both Corvettes went to the front, we were 1-2. I could feel that the diffuser was flapping around a little bit. So I had a feeling, not that I didn't kind of already have a feeling when I got smacked going about 30 miles an hour by the Ferrari behind me that we were going to have problems, but the vibration that we had at the high speeds, I could already kind of knew that our race was going to be jeopardized for sure. But at the moment, you kind of ignore that. You don't think about, well, we might have a problem, we just go racing. And it was a lot of fun that first stint. The car was absolutely amazing in the wet. It also helps that we were on the confidential Michelin rain tire, which we only get there at Le Mans. We don't get that in the US anymore. That was the tire that we were on at Petit Le Mans a couple years ago when GT cars won overall, because that tire is that good. And again, so we kind of got that experience again with that Michelin Confidential rain tire, and both. So Antonio started 6th, I believe, or 7th, sorry, and he was first, he was with me by the end of lap 2, and then he had passed me, I think lap 5 or lap 6, something like that, and we kind of ran nose to tail for quite a while. So the car was super, super good in the wet at the start of the race. Again, just kind of confirming to us, this car is so good, so fast, really easy to drive. Le Mans is tough because you run almost no downforce there. You try to run all the downforce out of it, take all the drag off the car you can, and go as fast as you can in a straight line. And with C7, when we did that, we had a really big handful of the car. And with C8, you can take the drag out of it, but you're still making good downforce. So in those conditions, in the wet conditions like that, it was absolutely amazing to feel what was to come, essentially, for the race. So, to make a long story short, for us, we had to stop 6 hours in to fix the diffuser. We had to stop again about 14 hours in because of other damage that had resulted from the diffuser flapping for 6 hours. So for ourselves, our race was, as far as the result would go, we kind of knew we were going to be not good. I think in the end, we were 5 or 6 laps down, but we continued on. We continued to. I said it after the race, but I think it was my engineer Chuck actually that said something like, "Hey man, this was 18 hours into the race." He was like, "Dude, that was a great stint. You were flying out there, fastest car on the racetrack, almost the whole stint." And he's like, "We're 5 or 6 laps down." I'm like, "Yeah, Chuck, I know we've been 5 or 6 laps down for about 10 hours now. I know where we are." He's like, "Well, not that it's a bad thing. He's like, why, why were you like, what was so good? Like, why was the car so fast? And I was like, it's just fun to drive. It's so much fun to drive. I want to go fast. There's sometimes that, some races like that, you're 8 hours into a race and you're 10 laps down. And there's not a lot of motivation at that point to continue to get every little bit out of the car. But the car was that good that it just made you want to drive as fast as you could for the whole race. And I think if you look at sort of the overall sort of fastest cars of the race with the best stints, I think Nick had the fastest sort of single stint or double stint basically of any of the cars in our class. And that came, I think, hour 20, hour 21 into the race. Nick, I think Alexander had the second fastest. I think I had the fourth quickest, something like that. So our 64 car was so good. So all that excitement you feel, is pretty deflating to have that contact and to realize, this wasn't going to be our year. But our teammates they had the same car. They had a similar feeling from us, and they were in the hunt. They were fast. I think they ended up 40 seconds back, I think something like that, or 30 seconds back of the winning Ferrari at the end. It's amazing to think that for that race, with all of the opportunities to gain time, to lose time, with safety cars and slow zones and all those things, it comes down to 30 seconds after 24 hours to say that you kind of missed out on that one. So second place, obviously, for the team is not disappointing by any means. Next year will be the last year for this iteration of car for the GTLM class or GTE class, basically at Le Mans. So even so, this year was a little bit disappointing in the end. Second place, like I said, is not anything to be upset about. But for as good as this Corvette is, for as fast as it is, next year we're going to be. There's not going to be, we're not leaving anything on the table. It's going to be absolutely everything that we have. I'm already excited for it. Just thinking about Le Mans next year, how good the car was. It is going to be the last year for that class, but still, there's going to be some anxious moments for sure that go into it, just knowing that this is sort of the last chance. This car deserves a win at Le Mans for sure, for as good as it is and how much time and effort was put into this car. It deserves a win, so that's our plan for next year, that's for sure. That is if we're invited, and I still haven't been told what's happening for next year, so I'm assuming it's happening. It is Le Mans. This team has been going there, but this was 21 years of Le Mans, right? Should have been 22 total, but we missed last year, unfortunately. So, I can tell you already, the team is already having us do simulator sessions where we're working on next year. So, again, like I said, it's high on this team. It is top of the list. And now, especially knowing how good this car was, we're going to get everything we can out of it next year, that's for sure.
Extra takeoff practice?
Yeah, hopefully we can figure out how to not stall there at the start of the race. That would be helpful and not give them the opportunity. Although I think had I even driven away at full speed, the guy probably still would have caught up to me at some point and made it a little bit close there.
Bigger brake light, maybe?
Bigger brake light. We did have the rain light on, which is massively annoying, which, speaking of that, we have a little secret for our buddies at BMW who like to flash so much, as we saw at Sebring this year. We have a plan. We have a plan for that. How to kind of get them back, basically. So if they want to flash, just watch the back of our car and see what happens.
Listen to Tommy talk about CA. Need a little history on how we got there. And just about this time in 1996 is when I got tasked with putting together the Corvette race program by our official. And I had just come off running the Oldsmobile WSC program for a year, in which we won a championship. And then Oldsmobile promptly disbanded the program and never integrated into marketing. And that was coming off the Beretta Trans Am program where we won a championship and they did nothing with it. And so I don't want to say disillusioned, but I was pissed off, all right? You get these guys to work hard, you put all the effort into it, you get going with it, and then the corporation does nothing with it. And so Herb came to me and said, I want you to do Corvette thing. I said, we need to talk about that. And I said, I'm not going to waste my time, again, going out, putting together a Corvette program and winning the championship and have absolutely zero use out of it by the corporation. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you saw what happened with Beretta, you saw what happened with Oldsmobile. Yeah, well, Doug, you know, that's sometimes how it happens here. And I said, no, that's fine. If you want to continue on down that road, that's good. Doug's not. He said, well, why don't you go and put together what you want to do? And then we'll see what that's about. And I said, okay. So I go back and take, you know, a lifetime full of learning of things that I thought the way things should have been done. Keep in mind that probably the largest single road race expenditure that GM had ever put forward in a year was, and again, we're talking middle 90s now, so it was about $250,000. All right, and that would be their contribution for a WSC or their contribution for a Trans Am program, and it would be for a one-year deal, and you'd get your money in August and September, and then you'd bust your ass for 4 months trying to get a car ready to go racing. That was a terrible way to approach things, just terrible. So I go and I put this program together, and I run it by him, and the first year, okay, was $1.3 million. The second year was $1.7 million, and then we would look at what we had achieved from a standpoint of design, build, performance, and then we would make a decision if we were going to race the car and where we were going to race it. So he's looking at that, and it's just him and I in the room. He said, well, what are you thinking? I said, this is the way a program needs to run if we're going to be successful. We have a brand new C5 Corvette coming out, brand new design, Dave Hill design deal. I said, this car is worthy of doing it right, which is why you asked me to put the program together for the new C5. Well, I know that, Doug, but no one is going to spend that kind of money. I said, then we're not doing it, or at least I'm not doing it. Well, we went back and forth several different meetings, and I wore him down, as I have a tendency to do with most people I come in contact with. Just easier, okay. So we went in the room, and I said, by the way, I said, we're going to have every partner, and that's industry lingo for the marketing director, the new car sales guy, the engineering team. Everybody who touches Corvette is going to be sitting at that table, and they're going to listen to this pitch. All right? And the basis of this thing is not just spending money, not just racing, because racing is more than a checkered flag and a trophy. All right? I had learned long ago that you need to integrate a program and glean value from it more than just standing up on the podium with a trophy. Nothing wrong with that. And yeah, you know, win on Sunday, sell on Monday, yeah. Okay, that works. But there's so much more in there that I knew was there that this company had never recognized. And quite frankly, most companies had never recognized. Well, John Middlebrook was one end of the table. He was a general manager at Chevrolet at the time. I was at the other end of the table. And every partner, when John Middlebrook was showing up as general manager, guess who else showed up? Everybody who worked for the guy. So everybody was lined up in the room. My direct boss and bosses were kind of off to the side because they knew what the content was, and they were worried about me probably getting shot at my end of the table once I put those numbers up there. So in those days we had floppies, you know, overhead projector. We didn't have PowerPoint and all that. So I put the thing up there, run through the program, talk about what it meant, how we can integrate it into the union assembly plant, bring everybody into the picture, the design team. Everybody in the corporation is going to have value from this Corvette race program. And then I put the numbers up. And I'm looking at John, but I'm looking in the room, and I can see all the guys that work in my group are kind of slinking back and moving down and looking for where the door is. I mean, they're ready to get out of the room because they're worried about what the fallout's going to be. So I put the numbers up there, and I tell them 1.3 million first year, 1.7 million, then we're going to look at the car, we're going to figure out where we're going to race it, blah, blah, blah. I'll never forget, he's at the other end of the table, he takes his glasses off, he lays them on the table, and he's rubbing his eyes. About that time, I'm thinking, I better get that resume dusted off, Doug, because you are out the window. He says, Fehan, this is the first damn race program I've seen that makes any sense at all. Immediately, all the guys were, John, I couldn't agree more. This is really what we need. He said, Dick Allman was the brand manager. He says, Dick, what do you think? Oh, John, definitely. He says, you know, this gives us the kind of thing we can buy and we can integrate this into the marketing thing. You know, Dave Hill's there. He said, well, you know, from engineering point, Dave says, yeah, you know, okay. I mean, they all bought in. That's how we began this. But remember that phrase, more than a checkered flag and a trophy, because in that, it talked about technology transfer. All right? We were gifted the C5. As a race team, we had no input into its design. And it was a magnificent car in its time. If you remember, it had those full-length hydroformed aluminum rails that made up the chassis. Okay? That was the largest hydroformed piece, single hydroformed piece in the world at that time, working directly with Alcoa to create that. And the whole concept of suspension and aero, and they had done a really good job with it, but it was a challenge to make a race car out of it. If you remember, it had the little cat whisker openings in the front, and then he took in a tremendous amount of engine cooling air underneath the car, and it came up through. And so we had to figure out a way how to duct all that, and I mean, it was a chore. So as we moved through C5 and began to have success with that, Dave Hill, what can we do for C6? What have we learned? What can we do for C6 to give you a better race car? I said, well, Dave, first of all, I was absolutely tickled that he would ask, because now that's the first step, you see, in what I call cascade engineering. You take a great road car, you make a race car, you take the learnings from the race car, put it back into the road car, and you work your way up. All right? I said, I need a big single air opening in the middle that I can duct my combustion air, brake cooling, engine air. And then I said, we need to lose the flip-up headlights. Oh my God. The look on his face was just a look of horror. Like I had just announced I was going to date his daughter. Oh, Doug, we can't. Dude, that's like the signature from 1963. I said, Dave, I said, they're friggin' air brakes at Lemans. I said, we have to get rid of that. I said, plus, let's look at it from a technical standpoint. That was just when HID, high intensity discharge lighting, was coming in that needed transformers and all that stuff. I said, when you're looking at advanced lighting, I said, you're not going to be able to flip all that stuff up and down. Well, you're right about that. Okay, so that's when we brought in the design team. Tom Peters, Kirk Benyon, okay, and made them part of our race team, saying, guys, we're building a race car here. We're going to sell it as a road car, but we're building a race car. We lead the windshield back 1 more degree to make it to whatever the legal limit was. We got rid of the flip-up headlights, we got the big opening, and the rest is history. Then we went on to the ZR1 package, which was a derivative of the race engine. I've never told this story before, but we were getting our butts kicked by Viper, who was running an 8-liter V8, and we're running the small block, okay? And so I go to my engine guys, it was K-Tech and John Rice, who was a GM guy. I said, what are we gonna do? I said, can we get more displacement out of the small block? He says, I think I can build a 427 cubic inch small block. I said, really? Yeah. So I said, okay, so I go to the powertrain guys, and I said, I need a 427 small block. Oh, Doug, we can't do that. No. Piston speed is too great, way too many problems, never work. We've tried it, couldn't do it. I go back to John, he's all bullshit. He said, we're going to, so you give me the go ahead, we're going to go do that. I said, great. They went, spent a winter working on it, all right, and he builds a 427 cubic inch or 7-liter small block. Well, the rest is history. It was dry sump. Well, guess where that went? ZR1, okay? That's how that cascade engineering works. The interesting side of that is Ted Schechter, who had worked for Dave and worked for Tom, okay, had come up through the process as a key engineer in that, and he had taken tires, very quiet guy, as you know, very understated, but he was looking and seeing and understanding what we were trying to achieve here with tech transfer, that we were actually making a better road car from what we learned in racing. Well, guess what? He gets his turn behind the wheel, and he was all in on doing this. He gets tasked with C8, and he says to me, we're building a race car. We're going mid-engine. This is going to be the best thing we ever built. We embedded Pratt & Miller engineers in aero advanced stuff. Pratt & Miller has some wildly advanced aero tools, right? Because they do a lot of top secret military stuff. And we worked hand in glove for the first time from a clean sheet of paper. Because there were no lines on paper. We didn't inherit anything. We were starting fresh. At the end of the day, I go back and I look at that presentation in 1996, and what I imagined and believed that this could be, and the C8 is that. It is the penultimate conclusion of those 25 years of working to reach a goal and finding people, key team members inside the company that were willing to buy in and believe in what we were doing and make it happen at all costs. Taj led that charge, and it was a pleasure for us to work with him. And I think any of you who are driving a C8 or read a road test on a C8 or watched the C8 on the racetrack or listened to what Tommy had to say about the C8 sees how far we've come and how valuable racing has been to the development of that car. I can tell you there's no other brand in the world, no other brand in the world even remotely approaches the relationship between their racing and road car. Not Ferrari, not BMW, not Porsche, okay? Corvette is a world leader in that. I couldn't be more proud of that in the team. And it goes deeper than that. When we started racing, we were using 5W50 motor oil, which was the conventional wisdom, you know, thicker the better, greater protection, blah, blah, blah. Well, at the end of the day, that's all true. But it's horsepower robbing, slugging it through that molasses, all right? Think about the technology that our partner, our strategic partner, Mobil, brought to the party. We're running on 0W20 or whatever it is now. Zero viscosity motor oil. The same viscosity as water. That's what you're buying for your car. That's what we're putting in the race car. How did we get there? We got there by creating strategic partnerships with the best companies in the world to help make our product better. Mobil won its first fill on every Corvette, all right? Racing brought that to the scene, their partnership with us. I mean, I'm not taking credit for that, they did all the work, but what I'm saying is that's what technology transfer does. I don't have to tell you about our strategic partner in Michelin, right? Some of you know the story about how we got Michelin tires on the car, but you look, I can remember when we made that switch, and it was, next dinner I'll tell you the internal, it's a great story, the internal story about how that happened, because it is a good story. But when we did that, we got great pushback from our customers because the other brand tire had been on there since 1953. And it was, an American company, and now suddenly, we're bringing foreign tires in, putting them on, and go, what are you doing, blah, blah, blah. Fine, okay? I knew what it was, the race team knew what it was, and by the way, over time, relatively short period of time, our customer got to see how our performance improved on the racetrack by our partnership with Michelin. Guy sitting at this table right here, Lee Willard, same guy who designs the race tires, designed the street car tire. And then Michelin began making aftermarket tires for the OEM, starting with the C5, which they had never done before. I, of course, the shill that I am, was selling Michelin tires to every Corvette corral because I knew they were better and I believed in it. I wasn't blowing smoke. It only takes 1, 2, or 3 people to make that change. You guys make that change and figure out immediately how superior that product is to talk to the next neighbor. They couldn't make enough replacement tires. You remember that, Lee? We were out of tires in about 2 months because they didn't even project the level of participation would be aftermarket. That's technology transfer, where racing builds a better street tire, builds a better race tire on forward. That to me is as rewarding seeing that C8 come down the line, seeing it in your hands, seeing Tommy race it at Le Mans, seeing it go to the front, seeing it win championships, that's rewarding. But knowing how we got there and creating these personal relationships with these strategic partners, how we've affected the elements inside the corporation from design and engineering, and that's what really, personally, I had envisioned in 1996. And we are there, and the product is there for you guys to enjoy. There's nothing more important than what we've done right there. It's so much more than what you normally would see. And we're going to open up for questions, but I want to close by telling you that this has been, for both of us, as I said in the beginning, a labor of love. And the business relationships and strategic partnerships we have created have brought us those championships and have elevated, I think they'd be the first to agree, Cam, Lee there, first to agree that it has moved their product up the ladder as well, the challenges that they have faced. It's been a great ride, and it's only going to get better. So with that, we'll open it up to questions to Tommy and myself. We cover a broad range of things. It doesn't have to be tech transfer or law, but we'll give you a chance to yell out whatever might be on your mind in the back.
We have heard back with the C5 and C6 and the C7 that the crowd around Le Mans seemed to enjoy the exhaust note. What's the exhaust note on the C8 brought?
Well, fortunately, our fan base has grown much older and their hearing has diminished. And so for the most part, they really can't tell the difference. All right. Yeah, I can tell you that's what originally endeared Corvette to the French fan, because they don't have large displacement two-valve motors over there thumping around. So they love that. And quite frankly, during the race, I mean, you can hear the Corvette from the pit lane go down Mulsanne. Obviously now with the flat blank crank, that sound has changed. The reality of it is that over time, it will continue to be a fond memory. I remember, and by the way, if you stand, I can tell you this, I could stand next to the car and have the old motor launch, and I wouldn't need earplugs. It would be loud, but I could tolerate it at whatever this thing, when it launches, dude, it hurts. If you don't, and you know that, I mean, it hurts. It's a different sound. You know, we'll see what Z06 does on the street, but you've heard it in the race car. Yeah, it's different, but so's mid-engine, you know. So's an all-leather interior designed by guys who actually cared about what the interior looked like. You know, on-street performance, 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. All that's different. So I think we gotta remember it for what it was and appreciate the fact that we actually got to witness it and hear it. And we have to be open to where we're going in the future so that we continue to be a leader. And that's how I've approached it. This new car is just outstanding. Yes, sir?
Can you explain to us what's going to happen next year with IMSA and how things are going to work?
You know, if IMSA was here, they couldn't do that. I can tell you on a personal basis, not speaking for the corporation out of school, what I think will happen is that we will run a single GTD class with a pro division and an amateur division. For us, we will dumb down our current car by special permission from IMSA, and for probably 1 or 2 years, we'll run our dumbed down car in that GTD pro class. And then, I'm making the assumption here that looks like it's strong, which it's, without talking out of school, I can tell you there are more manufacturers that will be running in GTD Pro, okay? Names that you recognize and names that you know will be coming back to the GTD Pro category. They will be there. And will be in the process. Common sense would say that we would then begin to design a GTD specific car, right, to that regulation. And that probably be, I'm guessing it would take, and again, personal opinion here, not the corporation, that'd probably take 2 years to do that properly. So right now, I'm encouraged by this. It's something that I tried to create back in 2000 with when I started with the FIA and the ACO, building a single car that can race any place in the world. and that was met with typical European blowback. But 20 years later, suddenly it's their idea and now it's wonderful. So we have not seen the best GT racing in America yet. It's coming and it's going to be pretty damn good. Yeah, I'm excited by it. Excited enough that I'm going to try and keep working. Sue me, don't pay me. Yes.
Hey Tommy, you mentioned about simulator time for Le Mans. How much simulator time do you do for the rest of the races on the schedule?
So a typical sim session, Charlotte, they call it the driver in the loop, DIL simulator. Because the teams have had a simulation software suite where they would just have like a computer in the non-graphical, just in a sort of, in the computer would just run laps and that would spit out information, lap times, things like that. The DIL simulator puts the driver in the loop of this simulation and we drive these models. So a typical simulator session is usually 2 days, anywhere from 1 to 2 drivers there. Lately it's been 2 drivers. And like I said, it's run as a normal sort of test day, as we would with the real car. There's a plan and things like that. So usually, I'll drive for an hour, and then I'm out for an hour, then the other guy that's with me then tests. So the usual flow of the test is each driver has a specific sort of goal, so to speak. So for instance, I haven't been to the sim now for 2 or 3 months now. But the most recent one, which I think is actually coming up this week, or next week, that would typically go basically, it would be a little bit of correlation from previous races. So the first guy might get in and do, let's say, the morning on VIR, and we would rerun some of the changes that we made during the race week, and we would basically correlate with what's happening in the simulator with what we felt in real life, and make sure that, again, just reiterating and making sure that the information that we're getting in the simulator is accurate to what it is in real life. That person then, that driver would then probably then, for the rest of the test, work on the next race event, essentially, or even beyond. So the next one, for sure, will have quite a bit of Road Atlanta running. So the other driver can oftentimes also do correlation, can oftentimes do Michelin. We work with them a lot with, because we have to use basically, we're trying to simulate their tires. And they have, in the last year or 2 now, have a simulation tire essentially that's available to us that is the best that I've ever felt in anything, in any kind of simulator, computer game, however you want to put it. As you would expect from the company that's making the tires, they know the most about their own tires. So that other driver would do maybe some more, and they're involving as that simulation tire as time goes on as well. So they'll run some new versions of that tire model, and again, try to correlate with temperature data, lap times, consistency, things like that, to make sure that is in fact a better step. They're looking for our feedback as well. How does it feel? Where does it not feel quite right? That driver oftentimes would then work on future versions or significant changes that might come for the car in some fashion, with like wholesale changes with, maybe the team's thinking about running a different style differential for the future. This is not actually true, but I'm just making all this stuff up, honestly. They would try just a totally different differential style, basically, and we would do a couple runs on that and get our feedback. So they use that simulator for the near term, current races and past races to correlate them, and they also use it then for future iterations of things like we did with C8. So it's used in lots of ways, and sometimes as a driver, I can tell you, driving, and Jordan can speak to this year, and this was my experience with C8. When you're driving a big change in some way, it's usually Road Atlanta, and it's usually endless laps at Road Atlanta, and you're sick of it, honestly, at some point. I think for this one, I did it must have been 12 or 13 sim sessions, and it was just Road Atlanta for, sometimes it was just me there, so it would be an hour and a half in the sim, 20 minutes out. I mean, I could have easily quadrupled the number of laps that I've done in real life in the sim in just a year and a half, just from those sim days. So it's used in lots of ways. Like I said, to me, it has become a very, very powerful tool for the team, because for all of last year and all of this year, when we show up at the racetrack, the race car feels really, really good. In the back there.
So, GTLN, GTD, can you give us some idea? We know there are differences, all right, between the GTLN and the GTD. ABS. What transmission are you going to use in the GTD? Is it going to be DCT or the current 6-speed sequential that you're using now? What other changes, when you say that we have to dumb down the current C8 to run in GTD, just exactly what are we talking about from a technical standpoint, if in fact you can give us that information?
So I think the most significant changes essentially would be what amounts to almost like BOP changes essentially. The biggest change, the most significant change will be going to what the customer Michelin tire. That is one of probably the biggest performance change, so to speak. The customer tire is by no means bad. We've tested on it in the past. It's still a really, really good race tire. It just doesn't have quite the ultimate performance. I think most significantly is you end up limited on tire compound options. So currently in GTLN, we have 3 tire options available to us. As far as I'm aware, in GTD right now, each race weekend, you only have 1 tire option. Michelin determines what that is for the weekend. I think they have sort of like 2 compounds, a soft and a hard, basically. And they determine for the racetrack what the right compound is for that racetrack. So that would be probably one of the most significant change. And then the other thing would be most likely more weight, essentially. I don't know exactly what IMSA's plan is because currently they add weight to the GTD cars to slow them down a little bit, because those cars are not slow by any means. If you a GT3, which is what GTD basically is, a GT3 car, the rules for that aren't like they are with an ACO FIA car, that there's not a very strict set of regulations that you have to build to. With GT3, you kind of present a car to them and you say, this is what we want a race car to be, and it can have lots of downforce and lots of horsepower, and then every year they do a BOP test and they try to balance all of the GT3 cars basically. So to get back to your point specifically, I think it'll just be a balance of weight basically. The tire, it'll allow us to run ABS, which will be a performance advantage for us, or a gain for us compared to this car. But as far as I'm aware, the plan is for them to have all the cars in GTD basically run to the same BOPs. There's not a separate BOP for GTD Pro and a separate one for the Pro-Am section of it. So what you should see essentially is 20-some GTD cars all racing together. There's just some cars that will naturally kind of rise to the top because of a full pro pairing and full professional team basically. So I'm just a dumb driver, to be completely honest. They tell me everything at the absolute, sometimes I don't find out what's happening until I get to the racetrack, but fundamentally, it'll be a very similar car to what you see here. It'll look the same as far as I'm aware. It'll have ABS, and it'll basically be balanced to race with the current GTD cars, however that happens. If that means speeding them up a little bit, it means slowing us down. How that exactly works, I don't know. But it should just look like a very large field of GT cars racing together.
Yeah, question or a comment from you regarding VIR and 79 car?
You want my comment?
Yeah.
I think it was awesome. Karma would be another great way of putting it. I think Wes will have me talk more specifically about it a little bit tomorrow afternoon, but it only takes 2 cars to have a good race. And when you have 3, you know, and obviously then when you have a car that's not under your umbrella, not your teammate, the racing can get a little bit more physical. And the Porsche decided to make it physical, and Nick Tandy had none of that, and finished the jobs. And yeah, it was a good result for both of us. Yeah. And he said it was more like a NASCAR race. I think Nick Tandy, even though his flag is that Union Jack, I think he was born in the wrong country, because the guy loves NASCAR. He drinks Mountain Dew in the morning. He likes his Doritos. He's as stereotypical as that is for an American. He's such a great teammate, and fits well within the race team.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I read a post on Facebook that the Porsche fans forget how the Corvette racing got pampered and pioneered in the past few years. So it's more payback for what happened.
Yeah, in that specific situation, Nick said that he was good friends with Kevin Astor, who was driving the Porsche. I think he still is good friends with him, but he said after basically being run off the racetrack by him a few laps before, and then watching him basically push Antonio off as well, he said, "Nah, that's not happening," and he gave it all right back. So that's how we're told to race each other by Bo Barfield, who's the race director. He's very much a proponent of, you know, race how you want to be raced. So if you race with respect with everybody else, then you should get that respect back. And I don't think that the Porsche gave a lot of respect to either one of us, and not a lot of respect was given again later on. So all's fair.
Yes. So Doug, you mentioned about we're going to see teams re-enter GT. Can you kind of give us an idea of why we are where we are? What happened that caused Ford and then Porsche and then BMW to, you know, start slacking off? Why did they quit racing? And then, you know, what are we changing that's going to bring them all back in?
Well, quite frankly, I get tired of getting their ass kicked. I don't want to be the guy that goes into the board at the close of a year asking for money for next year and telling them how much better we're going to be. You know, that works for 1, 2, or 3 years, but over 4 or 5 years, and you're not bringing home the bacon, that's a tough sell. And, you know, people forget how long we've been doing this. We're not in and out like these other guys, okay? Now, these other guys are going to be coming back in. Why? Because it's a new set of rules, and I'm sure they put together a story saying under these new rules, you know, it's a clean sheet of paper now, we'll have a better chance, it'll be more equal, and I can promise you we're going to be winning, all right? So that'll probably last for another 3 years. That'll be great. But that's why. It's just a hard sell. I mean, you look at, I mean, BMW, great racer. I mean, they were great cars. They were fast cars, all right? They did a great job of sandbagging all the time. And when they weren't stepping on their own toes, you know, they could bring home some victories. But they weren't able to bring home a championship. I mean, think about this, people. They BOP'd the living shit out of us. We didn't win a single race and we won the championship. How do you do that? How do you explain that if you're a Ford guy or a BMW guy or a Porsche guy or an Aston Martin guy or a Ferrari guy? How do you go back when you present your annual review to your board? How do you tell them, well, Corvette didn't win a race, but they won the championship? I mean, hello? How do we do that? Because we've been around the block. We have never missed a year. We hold the record at Le Mans for the most consecutive show-ups, 20, same team, same brand, same mark. Nobody in the history of Le Mans has ever done that. From that is what brings you the championships, the experience, the strategy, attracting the best drivers. I mean, Tom would be the first to tell you, and I'm not bragging here. You could ask any driver in the paddock, if you had picked one team you could drive for, who would it be? thank you, all right? Because they know A, you're gonna win, and B, you can make a career of it if you do a great job, because we're not going anywhere. But that's the answer. You can't sell it when you can't win, and what's bringing it back is a new set of rules, just like when we ran GT1 out of business, then we went to, well, GT2, or what's currently what we're calling GTLM, and everybody was there, and eventually they all dropped out. Right? It's, I can tell you corporately, it's a hard sell when you don't bring it home. And you can get away with it for a couple of years, and then the guys upstairs say, we're done. We're figuring out something else we're gonna spend our money on. Do you believe that answer? Thank you. I just made it up.
One more question before we go to the autograph session. Anybody else? A last question? Yes, sir.
It's mentally, so going from a group of 3 different cars, if you will, I've read more than 3, but 3 manufacturers to now a much broader field. What is that like for you and both of you? I mean, you've got a much wider field you're going to be talking about next year.
Well, it's more motivation, all right? Because now, to the point, you know, well, they're only racing one car. Yeah, okay. Well, how about all the other guys that we sent home, all right? Their trailers were worn out, lugging them home with no trophies. That serves, for me personally, that serves as motivation. It's just another statement when we win, all right, of how good we really are. Because now we're not just beating 1 team or 2 teams, we could potentially beating 4 or 5 quality manufacturers. I mean, that's our goal, that's our objective. It may not happen, but I mean, that's what drives us. And when you have more kids show up on the block planning on kicking your ass, what do you think happens? I mean, you're just up on it. It's as hard as you're working, dude, your focus is laser. Because now you know this is even a greater challenge. Tommy?
Yeah, so, I mean, we've had some years where we've had 12, 13 cars in our class. So I think Le Mans 16, 17, something like that. I think there was 17 cars in the class. So we've had years where it's been full of excellent teams, drivers, things like that. So in that sense, it's nothing new. I think from my perspective, and I think from the team's perspective as well, even so we're having to make changes to our car. I don't think, nothing about us racing, more cars is intimidating or, now we're like, oh man, we have to work harder now. I mean, I can tell you right now, I've never seen this team work harder this year than I have in any year in the previous season I've been with the team. Even so we're just racing ourselves, so to speak. We are doing everything that we possibly can from a team's perspective, but also sort of within each car. We're doing whatever we can to try to beat the other guys. And the 3-car guys obviously won a ton of races last year. They started off this season just as well. I can tell you I'm happy for the team, but selfishly, you're like, I want to, even so we're all contributing in some way. Getting the result feels like that's why we're here. That's why we're driving the race cars, is to win races. And even so, our teammates are winning races. You want to be the ones also that's doing that. And with that mindset, we're trying to find new ways to improve ourselves. And the crew guys are working as hard as ever in the gym to get faster and stronger. The engineers are looking. We're almost looking at the races with an even bigger magnifying glass, because any little downfall or any little thing that is not quite right is very, very obvious to all of us then within the team right away. So if anything, I think we're as prepared as we could ever be for moving to a new class, same series. We will have, and I'm not to disparage the guys in GTD. I mean, the level of competition, the level of drivers, the level of teams, if you watch that class, has grown over the years, and the teams that are winning races end up being 3 or 4 teams. So the best of the best in that class are having to improve themselves to continue to win races. So those guys have honed themselves racing in that class as well. So it's exciting to have more cars to race against. And I think more than anything, that's for us as drivers and from a team perspective, we're just excited to race against more people, to have more of those great battles that we had at VIR. You know, there's some races this year where we haven't had those battles, there's just been the two of us, and we've raced well together, but it's better when, as we saw at VIR, it's better when you can, you know, rub fenders a little bit.
Yeah, kick somebody else.
Yeah, it's more fun when you push off, you know, the guy that's 10 trailers down, you don't really care who he is.
And you don't get fired.
You don't get fired for it, that's also very important. Yeah, that's the first rule in racing is you do not hit your teammate. So.
I think, look back, was it 2016 or 2017, in the last final practice session, Jan Magnussen, tremendous crash in Porsche curves, he's out, car's retired. We're showing up at the race now, the next day, with one car. Now, when you're the 3 Porsche guys, the 4 Aston Martin guys, the 3 Ferrari guys, and now you see Corvette down to 1 car, what are you thinking? Dude, you're grinning in your sleep. You're thinking, this is our year. They only got 1 car, okay? Guess who won? The 1 car. Now, when that race is over, you've gone from, we got a real chance, to, who the hell are those guys, okay? That's what Corvette racing is. That they know we have a never give up attitude. They know we find a way. And I can tell you that at that race, at VIR, Esther was hanging it out and doing crazy stuff because he knew in his heart that it was going to be almost impossible to do it without doing that. He looked at, I don't have anything to lose because they're going to kick my butt anyway. All right? So I might as well just hang it all out there, hope for the best, close my eyes and hope I get through this. That's the reputation that Corvette has. That's pretty hard to face, race in and race out when you got to go against us. And makes me smile. I love that. We done here? Guys, Tommy, you want to say a few words in closing?
No, it's awesome to be here, to see a lot of faces that we see throughout the race year, but also some faces that we end up seeing just here at this event as well. So I think it's fun for us just to have a little bit more of an intimate evening. Just these kind of questions, things like that can kind of give you guys a little bit more of insight of what we're thinking, what we're feeling. You know, thanks again for you guys for coming out here. Really appreciate helping this whole program out.
And in closing, I'd like to say that two things. Obviously, we have our 2 strategic partners here, both Mobil and Michelin. To them, I want to offer a huge thank you. And taking up what Tommy said, yes. They have come a long way to make you the most educated customer base on the planet. I can tell you that my counterparts at other manufacturers come in, they will come and listen to what we do, all right, and watch what we do because they want to emulate what we do off the racetrack, like Corvette Corrals, and they are blown away by how bright and well informed you guys are about the product that you're driving. It's head and shoulders above what everybody else does. That makes me particularly proud that you're that engaged. It makes me really proud and happy that we have partners that are so committed to what we do at Corvette, that have a huge amount of pride in their own personal product, and they have chosen us to display that, okay? And by the way, changing to a single tire, that's a quote-unquote spec tire, I can tell you that the resources that Michelin had that they were putting into developing the tire specifically for us are going to be transferred to developing that spec tire. Now, although there won't be difference between cars, they want to continue their level of technology transfer as well, all right? So it by no means means that your road tires are going to become stagnant because they're not developing anymore. They're taking their focus and putting it on that. I don't like that deal at all. I think we should continue where we were. I'm working hard trying to convince people that we ought to get back there, and maybe we will, but for next year, we've adjusted, we're going to do that. But again, you know I'm sincere when I say this. Tommy and I do this because we love you, we love what we do, and we're proud of you supporting us, and we're very proud of our product and what we've achieved. So, thank you.
Okay, guys, so that kind of wraps up that seminar with Tommy Milner and Doug Fehan. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you watched both videos. If you didn't capture video number 1, I'll put a link to it down here below. But in video number 1, we cover the poker run, the Miller Family Garage Tour, the Army Heritage Center, and a lot of the content and the vehicles that are on display at the Hershey Museum, the AACA Museum in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Well worth the trip. So thanks for watching the video today, guys, and stay tuned for more fun and games to come out of Zippity's Garage.